Greetings. I'm John Butler, Investment Director at Southbank Investment Research, and it's my pleasure to host this edition of the Week in Review with Nigel Farage. Welcome, Nigel.
Thank you very much indeed, and what a week it's been.
I can imagine. It's been very busy up north, but there have also been developments across the pond, which are political bombshells potentially. But anyway, maybe we should start here close to home.
Yeah, I mean, look, we had the Conservative Party conference up in Manchester. It was Rishi Sunak's first conference speech as Prime Minister and almost certainly his last conference speech as Prime Minister. I don't think it's very difficult to predict that. Interestingly, of course, scrapping the HS2 extension was the big announcement of the week. Many in big business in the Midlands and the North are very unhappy because they had big lucrative contracts. However, if he's sincere that the 36 billion they'll save from not building the extension was to be spent in a whole load of links, a brand new station at Bradford, the link to Manchester, a link across to Hull. If all of those things did happen, then actually, longer term for the economy of the North and for jobs, it would actually be far more positive than making London even quicker and closer. So we'll have to see how that plays out over time. I thought there were two very big disappointments from the week, and that was number one, on the illegal immigration stuff. They just had nothing to say. Nothing to say. You know, they're not prepared to take on the European Convention on Human Rights, and therefore I think we'll make little progress. But the hollowest line of the whole Sunak speech was when he basically portrayed himself as being the same as the grocer's daughter. The grocer's daughter, of course, being Margaret from Grantham, and him, with a mum running a pharmacy in Southampton. And he said, we are the party of small business. Well, it sounded great, but to say that just a few months after you put up corporation tax by 30%, and where you completely refuse to review the appalling IR35 rules, which makes life for independent contractors so blooming difficult that many people in their 50s just retire, just don't even bother to go on working because they're not, they can't put their allowable expenses against their income. I thought that was really shallow. And there was nothing there for entrepreneurship, nothing there for any business outside of the big corporates. And that was disappointing because it comes at the same time as perhaps some good news, which is despite all the projections and predictions, actually our growth has been better than France and Germany's since Brexit. Now, part of that, of course, is that we're getting a net migration rise of 500,000 a year, so more people does mean a bigger GDP. But really interestingly, Andrew Out to Lunch Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, saying overnight that actually the city's in a better place because of Brexit, not a worse place, as had been predicted by George Osborne and everybody else. And even Rathi, the boss of the FCA, saying really Brexit puts our financial services industry in a much better position because we're now able to tailor legislation to our industries, our markets. So you've got some potentially quite good news out there. The idea that Brexit economically has been a catastrophe, I think that's for the birds now. The problem is, I just don't see the last days of a Conservative government or an incoming Labour government using the opportunities in a better way. So I conclude that relative to France and Germany, we're doing okay, but we should be doing quite a lot better. So, let's not be too pessimistic about where we are economically, but at the same time recognize that there are many wasted opportunities.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you're enjoying this content, you can get it every single day. Just click the link in the description or go to fortuneandfreedom.com. Get a daily email from our team of experts. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure you're not the only one who has that impression. And indeed, it's interesting to hear someone as establishment as Andrew Bailey even changing his tune now that the data show, as you've explained, that in fact, Britain has done relatively better than its continental peers post-Brexit. But let's cross the pond for a second. There have also been some political fireworks in the United States over the past few days.
Just a bit. Yeah, I mean, there is a hardline Republican gang, sort of MAGA supers, and they've always seen McCarthy, who I think is a thoroughly decent person. They've always seen McCarthy as being too much of the old guard compared to them. But then McCarthy's job is very difficult. You know, he's Speaker of the House with an absolutely wafer-thin majority. And what McCarthy wanted to do was to stop another government shutdown. And so Matt Gaetz, who you know, is a friend of mine, and I know him, but Matt Gaetz is determined that not another penny should go to Ukraine, that a shutdown is actually desirable. He's managed to get 7 other Republicans to vote to ouster, as the Americans called it, McCarthy as the Speaker. It's never happened before in the history of the USA. I think for the Republicans, it's a very bad look. You know, if you're really close into the weeds, you might say, oh, McCarthy sold out on this or McCarthy sold out on that. But you widen that out to the bigger, broader electorate. I don't think it's a very good look. And, you know, I think it may, as the next 39 days go by, and that is the deadline until the next government shutdown really would happen, you might see a little bit of nervousness on Wall Street, I suspect, over the course of the next few weeks as a result of what's happened. I must say, overall, when it comes to looking at equity markets and bond markets, I can't remember a time when informed opinion was more split, divided, and confused as to what the economic messages are. No one knows quite what to do. Quite a lot of people out there, as I understand it, are taking out insurance, buying put options against their established positions. We are at a very, very confused time.
Well, we're at a confused time politically and, as you say, in the financial markets. Here at Southbank Research, over the past few days, we've been noticing that an unusually high number of market cross correlations, when you look across interest rates, bond yields, foreign exchange, commodities, equity markets, they're just not behaving vis-a-vis each other as they normally do. And that is suggestive of building stress in the markets.
Yeah. Look, I think, you know, the risk of a bigger dip than a bigger rally is really quite great. Yeah, you know, I mean, we all know there's going to be a great big correction at some point in the next 12, 18 months. We just don't know when it is. But yeah, this indecision, unless something very positive comes into the markets, then we probably are in for a few shocks.
Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you agree it's never been more important to take control of your own money, your own financial situation. We do a daily free email, a Fortune and Freedom daily email with lots of knowledge, lots of insight. It's a very useful way of protecting yourself for the future. So please click the link in the description or go to fortuneandfreedom.com and get my daily email.